office in the town of Rosendale about a grant for $50,000 to assist us with town hall upgrades and to assist with the cost of a new highway garage roof.
He's just throwing money at it.
So that puts us roughly at, all total, $7.1 million, and that's rough that we've gotten in grants. So, and the stipulation is none are to be used on James Street.
Thank you.
Jack, we're doing your road, okay?
Jack, unfortunately, with that bid coming through as well as we did with the bid, it didn't come with the gatehouse.
No, but I my little sign told me about.
Yeah, but we saved $70,000 by doing it now.
Jack, if you notice on the agenda, we're going to be talking about the Halloween curfew. So
Oh, you might want to
you have
stick around
something
for
to do with that
that.
evening down there, so
Yes,
perhaps you want to weigh in.
Excuse me, Jean.
Yes.
Is all my stuff in order? Do you need anything from me? Are we going to
We
address
haven't,
this?
we're gonna, basically it's tonight's review, and then, I haven't really looked at it to any length since you first sent
I
it in.
feel like everything's in order. I just came here to answer any
Yep.
questions.
Let's just pull it up. Yeah.
As a regular Zombie Fest goer, I can tell you it's a very
You had
well-run
the
affair.
guidance through the
I
organization.
supplied them with everything they asked for. Everything seems to be in order. I just came to answer any concerns or questions anybody has.
I would say that, I kind of like the idea that it got moved to October.
Yeah, because I
Closer to
thought,
Halloween.
Yeah, because it's more of a Halloween issue, you
And a
know?
little bit of village start.
Yeah. Yes, Jack.
Are you going to have a regular meeting now?
This is a regular meeting,
I
yes.
mean, but you're going to ask the public if they have any input first, or you're going to go right
I already
into it?
did that.
You did?
Yes. I did that before we opened public hearing.
No, that's what I'm asking. So now after the public hearing,
I did that before the public hearing, but
Right.
when I'm done with her, unless you have a question about the Zombie Fest,
anybody have any
no,
questions
I
about the
thought
zombie
we were going to
fest? I
go into a
submitted all the
regular meeting
information
now,
that you
starting
requested.
with anything from the public input.
I'm going to say this again.
I know, you said it in the beginning of the public meeting.
Before the public meeting, before I open the public meeting, I asked if anybody had any public comments, but I'm happy to take your public comment after I do with the Zombie Fest, because I'm in the middle of that now.
Can we make James Street a state road and a highway?
Oh,
Is
could
it,
we
are
stop
you guys
wasting
gonna have
time?
food?
Jeez.
I mean, is there gonna be any food served at the?
Yeah, brains.
Lots of brains.
I don't
Brain
think we're going to have any
sandwiches.
food. The
Okay.
Rosendale Cafe is always open.
Yeah, oh no, I know,
Well,
we've got all
sure,
the
they
restaurants
Don't think
open.
we're gonna have any
Just
food.
curious if you were gonna have any,
No
there are not
food.
gonna be any vendors there, or,
I don't think there's going to be any food.
okay.
But then this is your second or third year doing this?
I'm
again?
sorry.
It's the
Fourth.
Is it the fifth year already?
Fourth or
Okay.
fifth.
Time flies by.
You know, I think
Just-
it's the 5th year, yes.
Well, I know that you've been putting this event on for a number of years for the benefit of the food pantry. And as president of the food pantry, I just want to say publicly thank you for your efforts.
And Lara Hope.
So make this.
I hope that we can supply a good donation this year.
Well, absolutely. It gives the residents an opportunity to have a fun day. And at the same time, it has an end result of helping feed some people that really do need it. And unfortunately, as I report here every month, our numbers at the food pantry seem to go up every month. We're feeding more families each and every month. And, our goal as a food pantry is, I've said it many times, is to go out of business, and I hope someday we do, because there's lack of clients. But until that time, thank you for your efforts.
Thank
And if
you.
you have any suggestions for us, how we can help raise more money, we appreciate that.
Have a good time at the Zombie Fest.
Well, we're not,
Zombie Dunkin'
we're going to
Booth.
approve it next Wednesday, okay? So that's just the
Okay.
process. Gives the board a chance to, just to look it over. The board is only getting it tonight, so this is a review process.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm just here to answer any
I'm pretty
questions
sure
that
they
you
do
have.
Hey, you guys should have zombie face painting.
Maybe one way to raise more funds, raffle off a couple of tickets to the Headless Horseman, which is another great.
In the past, we've had it as a prize. We do a costume contest, and we've had it as a prize they've donated.
That's great.
But that's a great idea, because last year they didn't donate. So we could
Yeah.
raffle it off. That's not a
And
bad
that's
idea.
something that everybody would, I mean, we
Just
all
buy it and
enjoy
raffle
it,
it
but
off, yeah.
at like $40 each.
Thank you. Thank
So-
you. Think about that.
Okay, so this is gonna get reviewed during the week by the board, and we'll have a vote.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
are so
Yeah.
patient. Oh my God, thank you.
You guys are very.
Thank you, we love you. We
Mark,
love
thank you.
Rosendale.
Yeah, and if there's any questions before Wednesday, please feel free to call me.
All right, thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, and next we have Pickle Festival.
Festival?
Oh, Jack, yes, what can I do for you?
Jeanette Coron, I live on James Street, and I'm a neighbor of Jack's. So I'll be talking pretty much about the same thing as Jack has been talking about at the meetings. It has to do with the noise that we get from the different eateries down on Main Street that go well beyond the 10 o'clock cutoff time. They go till sometimes 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I have called the police a number of times, not recently because I've been away for a while, but, last year and at the beginning of this year, I have called the police, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning to check in on things. I don't know how that can, this ordinance can be enforced, but it is very troubling because we have the creek between Main Street and James Street, and the water, although there's not much there now, acts as a conductor of voices. I can hear conversations down on the outdoor platforms that are there. And if there are microphones that are used, I run an air conditioner and I have a white noise machine that I had to purchase because it is so noisy. I can't sleep in the house. So I don't know what can be done.
I'm at a loss too. It's been, we don't have any other way to address it. The only thing I can say is from what you're saying, it's probably not even because they're too loud. It's just the way it's echoing.
No.
Because
It's too loud.
If you call the police, are they saying they're going down and
They
people
say
are-
they go, and then they don't go because they're tied up in other things.
Can I ask, is it outdoor, or is it
It's
outdoor
Mostly the outdoor.
performances?
Yes.
Would it be existing businesses that perhaps have musical venues outside, or would it be perhaps residents along the venue that throw parties on a regular basis and charge people to come to those parties?
It's both.
Because
I think you have to call the police every time this happens because it's the only way to develop a record and have something that the police can take action. Because if the people, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but I mean, this might be a conversation that Jack and you can talk to Chief Soul and talk about.
One of the situations that you have is
Done
that
that already.
the organizations down there that will have a business, God bless them, and they come for our town and all, but they'll have a wedding. Now, the people that come to this wedding, they're drinking and they're having a good old time, but again, like I'm saying, they're on a back porch, no bigger than this. Why do they need microphones and amplifiers for somebody to be singing and music going on? If you look at your school, if you go down to the college or the schools, you see the band sitting up on the stage, and behind them, they have these big curtains that project over. That's to move the sound forward. Let them put those up on the barriers on Main Street to keep the sound on Main Street side of the creek.
That would be
That's
some-
what I'm talking about when you're saying you're gonna overflow and okay businesses to come in. How are you gonna control them? Because once you okay them to have a restaurant or a bar or whatever it is, but you're not controlling the sound or what they're doing after they're in
I understand your
business.
concern. The thing is that you're talking about a district where that's an allowed use. The zoning allows for that where it is, so that's a whole other situation.
One time I had the police come down. If you come down Main Street and drive down the middle of the street, you can't hear hardly anything that's on the creek. Come up on James Street, and it's like it's in your backyard.
Are you asking them to come up and?
I had them come up there with the sound machine, and of course, at one time they came with the sound machine because we had a street festival for 2 days, 75 bands, and somebody thought they had to have another band in their backyard Sunday night, right? And this is going on with microphones and amplifiers and everything else. They couldn't find, or nobody knew where the sound machine was for the police department. So they couldn't justify how loud it was.
I think, no, not I think, I'm sure your concerns are very much legitimate. And I think it's a weird situation. I think somebody hit the nail right on the head. With that creek right there and the echo factor, I mean, even at a small talk, I bet up at your house you can hear a whole conversation. So to back up, to solve the problem, it's gonna be a head scratcher, I have to admit.
Well, again, like I'm saying, if the ordinance could be passed, that no amplifiers are allowed after 5 o'clock at night or something. Why do you need an amplifier in a room like this, for somebody to stand up there and sing and play a guitar or on the trumpet or something? And you gotta have amplified speakers blowing all over the place? This is ridiculous.
But there's an ordinance that at 10 o'clock that the noise.
Yes.
They're supposed
That's
to
the
be done
bottom
in
line.
time.
Yes.
And they
That's
do
why
not
you have to
honor-
call the police.
They don't honor that.
And I'm gonna guess that probably most of the legitimate businesses down there that have venues stay within that context. I don't know of too many places, just hear me out, too many businesses that have bands outside past 10 o'clock that are blaring. However, I do know that one of the problems that you're experiencing up on James Street, because I've heard it, is, again, the use of private individuals that are holding rock concerts on their property and charging people to come to these concerts. And they're competing with our legitimate businesses, who in many cases have gotten variances for parking spots in the municipal lot, and you find out that on the nights that these venues are going on private property where this person or people are charging, that our parking lot, our municipal lot is filled up with their patrons. And our businesses are suffering because they can't park their customers. So, again, I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed, but I think the bulk of the problem lies with these individuals that are throwing for-profit venues on their property and utilizing our public parking. And we're not getting a dime out of taxes or anything else. It's just like me or you saying, I'm gonna throw a party for 500 people and charge $10 and have 7 bands. Nobody says boo. But then, when Councilman Ryan says that he gets phone calls, this whole board gets phone calls. That's what we do. We field phone calls from our residents.
Well, I have to-
Hold on, gentlemen, I'm done. Hold on.
If the town board can sit and help justify the rules that we have for sound. If we're saying from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, well, how about knocking it down to 9 o'clock?
Yeah, but
and
it's not
lowering
the
it?
same rule everywhere, Jack. You know, obviously you guys have a unique
Yeah.
situation.
And-
You're
and-
across the street, across the creek from the business district, and you have the echoing factor of the creek. So I can't change that
You
law
can't make a
for
ruling
every.
that you can't have amplifiers?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the situation is on their end of it. You know, how does that affect their venue? I don't know.
I don't think you could do that for a commercial Main Street. I have total sympathy for you guys, because I have the same, I have the same thing where I'm on Mountain Road, actually. There was a house, we used to call it the Rock and Roll House, on the other side of the creek. And it was just a house with kids that had, a band, you know, instruments, amplifiers, and they would play all night long. And we would just, but it was inside their house, but you could hear absolutely everything. And I can hear everything. I can hear everything that goes on around, you know, the block for me. I mean, we have great surveillance of what's going on in town, but it's just like the topography of our town is such that it presents
And that's
really
the big
unique
deal.
challenges.
Well, the other thing
But it's not that way
talked to
everywhere.
my neighbors
And that's
about.
why if
Well,
you
that's what I'm
create a
saying.
law,
You know
it
what,
has to be.
the solution, my suggestion for a solution, we've talked about this before, I know, I've talked to you at Stewart's about it and here, and I understand where you're coming from. My solution, to talk about it sometimes doesn't give you any leeway. My suggestion is, if you don't have a computer, if you do have a computer, email the police department, Chief Soul, or send a letter and keep a copy certified letter. That way, now you have written documentation that this complaint has been going on X amount of time. Sooner or later, something's gonna have to be done about it. But we as the board, we're kinda locked in. You're right, there's a variance, a sound variance, or a sound law, 7 a.m. to 10. If it's going beyond that, we can't enforce what the law should be
But part of
enforcing.
that ruling is that if they stand out in front of the hotel or bars or restaurants with that sound machine and it reads 14 degrees,
Jack.
okay? But go back on the creek side, which they can't do, and you're gonna read 40.
Jack, I want to help you solve the problem, and you got to listen to me. We've talked about it. Sometimes talking doesn't do you any good. Email the police department, email Chief
I
Soul.
think they need to call the police.
Yeah.
They
Well,
can't.
I know
we
what
could
you're talking
Well,
about.
You have to have documentation
Exactly.
of the complaints.
I have one other thing that
And I will support you as long as you have documentation, because I'll say he has complained about it at town board meetings, but if you follow it with black and white, that way people can say, I never knew about
Well,
it.
we're gonna do that, and then there's one other thing I suggested to my neighbors, that we're gonna get ourselves a sound speaker and an amplifier, and go down on Creek, and blow it back to Main Street. We're gonna put on,
That's just
no, why not?
Because,
They won't know.
because now the police are gonna say, you've snooped
Especially
all
when
over.
it's gonna be Chinese music.
Now remember, they are, that is, I mean, I think Ken has a good point. If it's residents doing it after hours, it has a little bit easier time to control it. But businesses that are set up and allowed to do that, it's hard to
Well,
keep
from what I
control.
understand, the one who had the wedding, I think they brought their own band, and they used the backyard.
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, and it's not
And
the,
it went past that
they don't
block.
have their own band. So whoever got married, you know, had a band come in and all, but nobody's telling them. The guy that owns the business isn't telling them, hey, you gotta stop it down or blow it down.
Well,
Right
you know
now,
what?
but
Did you make a
after-
complaint that night when it went after 10 o'clock? Why-
We called the cops.
Right.
And what did the cops say?
They weren't there, they had to go to another call, or they didn't have the sound machine.
Yeah, but that's one time. You've got it, you're telling me it's happening all the time.
I called the 3 different times.
That's 3 times. That's not
I
gonna,
know, but-
because you know what, if they get a ticket, okay, that's a ticket.
If
If the person is, if they could give them a ticket, okay, for violation.
They could cite them.
They could cite them with a
Violation.
ticket. Then they're gonna go to court, okay? So if the judge sees, you know, that's something that then it becomes before the judge. That's why town board doesn't really have authority over that. That's a court issue.
Right.
Do you have any
But we
idea
could-
what the fine would be?
And no, I have no idea about court.
No, I'm just thinking that it's
We
$50,
don't-
and
we
the
don't
guy's
have
making
any
$5,000
oversight,
on his
Jack.
business.
We don't have any oversight over the court. That is a separate, you
This
know,
is-
No,
that's
Yes.
a
what
branch
what
of
I'm saying
government.
is that if it's a $50 fine, the guy's gonna say, hey, I'm making $5,000,
I understand.
I'll pay the $50
But Jack-
and
Yeah,
start
but
another band.
you have to make the complaints. That's the only thing that the police have, you know, it's the only way you can deal with it. I mean,
Put
there's
it in
nothing-
writing,
And-
documentation.
And we'll also mention it to them too.
But I think talk to the chief, see what he says, but I mean, it's really something that's a police
All
matter
right, well,
and a court
let me,
matter.
can I make a suggestion too? That anybody that sits on the police commissioners committee, maybe bring it up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Me?
Well, she's the head commissioner for the police department.
Yeah.
So, you know, if there's complaints.
But Jack,
see you.
but Jack, just remember, in order to help yourself, you can't always discuss it. You gotta put it in writing or via an email. Because now you have black and white documentation that I have complained X amount of times. It wasn't just once or twice, it was a number of times. But if you keep coming and talking to us, it's a law enforcement situation. We don't have jurisdiction over that. It's out of our hands. You need to help yourself by following up with the state police, Ulster County Sheriff's Department, or Rosendale Police that you pay taxes on, and via an email to the chief of police. Every time there's a problem, because the law is 10 p.m., the noise factor goes in place. So if you're in fact saying that this is going on beyond that, you gotta follow it with black and white writing, or else we
We're
can't
gonna
help
have to
you.
move on here. Sorry, guys.
All right,
It's
thank
getting
you.
late. Yes,
I don't know really how this works, but I need to bring up something.
sure.
I've been to building and code enforcement a number of times. My neighbor,
Tell me your name, sir.
Donald Williams, I live at 7 Meadow Court in High Falls Park. I reported a neighbor, rats, garbage. I've killed 100 rats in like 6.5 months. This has been going on for about 3 years. I'm
Is
just
that a vacant
fed up with
property?
the whole situation now. It was the 4th month, the 15th day when I first came here, so what's that, 5.5 months ago? There's not much progress going on with getting the stuff out of there. I actually took 100 bicycles out of my neighbor's yard for him. I offered to take stuff to the dump for him. He says it's a process he has to go through. Who needs clothes baskets full of old shoes? 10 pickle jars. It's just, it's garbage. There's 3 canvas carports in his yard. You might be able to see them from your yard there. that just, it's full of garbage. He had one tin shed full of newspapers where the rats was living. It's a little ridiculous
We
now.
understand and we sympathize. We
Don,
are,
from what I know, after you made that complaint, that he was approached, and I know that the owner of the property was approached, Mom, and supposedly Mom gave him the boot, and he mowed, and there was some stuff done, and to what extent, I don't know, but I hear what you're saying.
I
But,
will say, let me just say that I do believe that, I've had a recent conversation with our code enforcement, and it's one of those situations where it's, they ask him to do a certain amount of things, he's doing it, and it's trying to work with that person, because obviously, there's something going on there that he needs help, this person, right? So, I understand your frustration, we are working on some codes right now to try to address it. We had something proposed a while back, and we had similar to this tonight, people are, they don't like the way you wrote it, and you wanna fix it, so we're working on it again to try to make it something that everybody can work with. It's very difficult because people have certain property rights, and the code enforcement officer has limitations about what he can do when somebody is in violation, because he's not allowed to go on their property and tell them to do something unless it's a health hazard, and then you gotta bring the health department in, or you bring in, social services or something if somebody's health is at risk.
Well, see, I've been told by, I think it's Dave Mancini, that he did contact the health department.
And you?
And then I kind of found out he didn't contact the health department. This is a number of times, I even brought a big rat in to show him, because maybe he thought I was lying. I marched it right through in a plastic container. My son actually stepped on his head. I said, "What are you doing?" I got a big one. It come from his side. I have a garden. They come over to eat my tomatoes. They eat my wife's bird feed. My wife's afraid to sit on our front porch with the baby because of rats running around. I think I got them on a run. I started using poison. I didn't want to use poison. But I'm afraid they're going to build back up their colonies, and we're going to be overloaded again.
So did you call the health department?
No, I didn't. I'm not trying to push the man. To be honest, there is something wrong with him. We hear him hollering and screaming on the phone with his mother that, "I hope you die, you effing
I
bitch."
just want to say that's not really something I want to talk about a particular person in this venue.
Right.
I'm happy to
But-
discuss this with
But
you
you should call
outside
the
of the
health
town board
department.
meeting, because we gotta be really careful how we talk about.
Okay, but like, code enforcement said he's been sending Marshall the notifications the last time I was up here, and I would think he would have to notify his mom, who's the owner of the property.
I
She
will,
has been.
I believe that she does.
Well, the last time he said he was notifying him. I was up here maybe a week ago.
Subsequent to that, it was found that, that he's not the registered owner, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was sent to the registered owner.
You know what?
I would.
There was a little bit of movement this summer as far
He
as.
did take out about 3 or 4
Yeah.
dumpsters full, but
that
there's
doesn't
just
answer
so
the fact.
Now,
much.
you live next door,
Yes.
there is absolutely no reason in the world why anybody has gotta live next door and be subject to rats. I'm sorry. And you know what? I commend you for being as patient as you are. As I told Mr. Snyder, you know what? Get the email address to the health department and make a phone call, but email. And go that route.
I'm gonna talk to code enforcement again tomorrow.
He actually had his window.
I mean, we talked about it, him and I talked about it this week, so I know he's been trying to get within the law, trying to do what he can. But if it's a health department issue, we need to contact them and say there's an issue here.
No,
But yeah,
I realize people's got limited funds, that's why I offered, I have a
Right.
truck, I have a
Right,
trailer, I
right.
can help you, and he
And,
tells me it's a process he has to go through. This is garbage, this is
You
just
know,
garbage.
we don't have the authority to go in and make him do it.
Actually,
We can give him violations, and you can say you have to fix it, that's all we can do, and he can keep pressuring him.
He
That's
ac-
what he's doing.
he
He's
actually-
pressuring him on a regular basis, but that doesn't mean that there isn't another agency that can be reached out to.
Well, I thought there was already town rules and regulations, and you couldn't have
Give
stuff
me-
like
Yeah,
that.
Well,
but it's
the bottom
always
line
good
is,
to
Don-
call the health
Don, the
department,
bottom
though,
line is that,
always. You should. Just so they can hear your, it's a squeaky wheel thing too. I mean, if they hear it directly from the affected residents, that's their job. Is
I ain't trying to get
protect
nobody
your
in
health.
trouble, but I'm just at my wit's end now, you know.
And especially the Berman situation, I mean,
Yeah, it's terrible.
that's terrible. But, going back to, you had said that town, does the town have regulations to, cover that? Yeah, to a certain extent, but, we've all seen this TV show, The Hoarders and all that, and that's an extreme situation. There's laws in the books that would cover certain dilapidated properties and where it becomes a health issue, especially with vermin. But the fact of the matter is that, government, town government, state government, or the federal government does not and should not have the right to come onto your property or my property, and anybody on this board
Decide what
say,
you get to throw away.
me come on your property and say, I don't appreciate that truck that you haven't used in 2 years, and the barrels along the side of your house are full and they shouldn't be removed, and I'm not particularly fond of your trellis because it's breaking down. With that said, the color of your house doesn't correspond to, you know where I'm going to? So there's got to be that fine line.
And that's why when
we have home rule, we have, it's America, you get to, but once you start impeding on your neighbor's right to exist, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't like what you see on my property. That doesn't impede your right to exist. But when whatever is on my property creates a health hazard, such as vermin that comes onto your property, that's where those laws kick in.
But
And
if
should
a rat
kick in.
bites a child.
Well,
No,
we can sit here all night and say, what if, what if?
Well, see, he did say about 15 years ago, do you mind if I put this close to the property line? I
Yeah.
said, I don't care, how would you want? I didn't really think they was gonna draw rats, places for them to live. I actually just, this week, he finished getting his stuff off of my property that I pay taxes on. It was 2 feet on my property. I just moved my fence over, right on the property line, actually finished it tonight, and hopefully he keeps up on it. There was a tree I wanted to take down years ago. He said it was on the property line. Well, now we know where the property lines, the tree is this much on his property, the tree is this much on my property. It's a huge tree. Now it's leaning his way. I could have took it down years ago, very easy myself. Now it's gonna be, $800-900 job for somebody to come in and do. Now he tells me if it falls on his house, I'm gonna be responsible, which he refused.